All right. Well, good morning, good evening, as the case may be. Good to see everybody here in this exciting crypto market again. Vince, very good to see you. How you doing this morning?
Doing good, doing good. What's going on, Jack?
Nice.
Excited to be here. Excited to
Awesome.
dive in.
Where are you calling in from?
Calling in from the great city of New York. So down here in
New
Manhattan.
York City. Well, wonderful. So, Vince, I think most folks know you from Kado. And yeah, do you mind giving folks just a brief background of sort of like what got you into crypto, what the last couple of years have been like for you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So, quick background. I'm the co-founder, COO here at Kado. So, really leading a lot of our external business relationships, partnerships, business development. My background has really been in the business development space in software sales and working in tech and payments. Coming out of school, was working on a business development
Since I
role.
used to be one of those enterprise weirdos too,
Yeah.
which particularly which verticals?
Yeah, so this was a basically enterprise loyalty software startup. So we
Cool.
were selling to Starbucks, to Nike, to Walmart, these really big kind of consumer enterprise brands where they need this tech to engage with their consumers, to drive loyalty, these kind of, traditional Web2 incentives. It's actually been like a really cool background coming from loyalty
Yeah.
in software sales. And then, leading business development over there, we actually got acquired by MasterCard right around kind of 2019 there. So going from loyalty then to traditional payments, diving into that, rabbit hole with the traditional payment system, Visa, MasterCard, credit cards, all that stuff works. And then, leading business development globally for a couple of loyalty and payment products over at MasterCard. And then, the logical transition going down the rabbit hole of crypto, kind of leaning into Web3 payments is really what Kado is really focused on. So having some of that background has been, pretty exciting. I'm not someone that's been in crypto since 2017, since 2013, right? I always get jealous of folks that have been here, um, from the early days. But I've definitely seen the past cycle and seen the ups and the downs, and we'll jump into how that's been for us. But it's been a pretty exciting journey, right? We started Kado back in like May of 2021, and it feels like it's been 20 years in crypto years, right? Even though it's only been a little over 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that was right before Terra collapsed. So
Yeah.
before we get to that piece of it, um, so like loyalty programs, this is always been one of the major hypothetical use cases for crypto.
Yep.
Um, what's your current view on how hard it would be for a crypto application to crack into that market? My guess
Yep.
is very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. It really needs to be. It needs to start so small to almost just pivot your way into these, just how the programs are set up today, and then one or two like cool feature that is complementary to the program, but it's not trying to get these big teams to completely overhaul their complete marketing program and take a big leap of faith. Like that's just something that no one's going to be comfortable with doing, like completely positioning towards a Web3 loyalty strategy. These businesses and these teams have spent decades to really design these programs, and they put millions and millions of dollars into the tech, connecting the data points, right? They got to understand where Jack is coming from the point of sale in store to actually engaging online to doing things across different channels. Like that's the first piece from the Web2 point of view that we were really focused on, was like just connecting these data points to understand who Jack is really in the best way possible to, we want to give Jack the best
Those are
reward, the
like
best incentive.
ad data markets, right?
Yep. Yep. It's, the third party data channels, the first party data channels, getting this kind of like cohesive view of what's going to get Jack to do the next action that we want him to take. Right. Because traditional loyalty programs was all about blanketed, buy 9, get the 10th free. That applies to every single customer, right? It's not unique based on each character profile. And, the loyalty programs of traditional kind of like V1 loyalty, where there's blanketed programs, a lot of the teams had to shut those down because financially they realized the ROI wasn't there, right? They're just giving out these free rewards to things that users were going to do anyways. So that's where like we were really focused on was what's that incremental action that we can get Jack to take based on what the data is telling us, based on his unique profile. If Jack comes to Starbucks, he gets 3 cups of coffee, but he never gets an item of food. Once he gets that 3rd cup of coffee that week, let's give him that incentive to go get that extra item, versus getting another cup of coffee, which we know that Jack's going to do anyways. So that's just eating into the bottom line. So Yeah, that's like the complicated side of traditional Web 2 loyalty, and then figuring out how to bring Web 3 into that. There's a lot of really exciting use cases, right? I think like NFTs, NFT might be like a scary buzzword for some of those teams, right? Maybe changing some of those terms might make them feel more comfortable, but there's ways to kind of use these digital, ticket items, these digital programs where you can actually do a lot more than just traditional loyalty without any kind of NFT infrastructure or anything like that is just locked into the four walls of the brand, right? There's no way to kind of port that reward, port that loyalty mechanism to a partner brand, to a new kind of ecosystem. There's so many things that are possible once you kind of bring some of these Web3 mechanisms into it.
Yeah, I think that that's going to be really interesting. I wonder what you think the likely catalyst for the development of that ecosystem is. You said start small. Is this
Yep.
like a brand has to grow up with one of these loyalty programs? Maybe somebody like yourself who's been in the industry comes out,
Right.
they create a clothing brand that's specifically focused on this. And then, I mean, I'm just spitballing here. You create a clothing brand that's specifically focused on this, and then you go do collaborations with a bunch of other clothing brands,
Right.
and you like create this like clothing loyalty token. Is that one potential vector?
I think so. I think so. I think the way that I kind of view it, and it's also similar from a payments perspective as a loyalty perspective, is you kind of need both sides of the spectrum. You need a really big brand. Starbucks is already kind of doing this. Starbucks is really seen as like the gold standard when it comes to loyalty programs across any
Yeah.
brand, really. And so they're dipping their toes in some Polygon stuff, some like Quest stuff that they were kind of exploring. And I think that's really important to just validate it to other marketers
Try it
from like
out.
a job security
Yeah.
perspective, right? Like if you're a marketer, you're not going to stick your neck out unless you see the gold standard Starbucks. They're doing it. Okay, then it's safer for other brands to kind of follow. But I don't think it's fully going to be a traditional Web 2 brand that's going to crack the code. I think there needs to be Web 3 native teams and brands on the front lines of the industry that are actually experimenting and doing new things, because that's the edge of someone that's really Web 3 native is really understanding the ins and outs of these programs and things that are completely possible. There's a big learning curve for these big Web 2 brands, right? And Web 3 native teams are a lot more experimental and a lot more, risk taking approach, right? So it's similar for payments. Where we fit on the Web 3 native payment side, we're a big believer that you need to stay on the front lines. That's why we're so deep in Cosmos,
Yeah.
so deep in the weeds. But then there's going to be brands like PayPal and Stripe that need to come in from the Web 2 perspective, but they're never going to be able to be as nimble and quick and in the weeds as someone like us, right? So it's kind of both approaches bringing the space together.
Sorry, we've talked about this in person, and like I haven't kind of grilled you on it because we had other stuff to talk about. But I find people with deep experience in related industries to be the best founders in crypto. And I think the reason for that is there's a lot of folks in crypto who you would consider like crypto native.
Right.
And I don't love that word, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that a lot of those people come in, they see the state of what's happening, and they try to move that forward.
Yep.
And that's great. I mean, that's tremendous. Like that's all you can ask from anyone. But I think that what a lot of the industry fundamentally misses is that there's a lot of prior art in related industries. And I see people making the same mistakes over and over again that have been made in related industries. And for me personally, that industry was like Web 2 server administration and database stuff. And like there's a lot of mistakes that crypto blockchains slash databases, which is fundamentally what they are making that have been made in the Web 2 world. And I think that from a distributed system standpoint, a lot of Web 2 databases will prioritize like liveness over safety or partition tolerance. And that's their set of incentives, and there was a huge tech tree that was built out with that set of trade-offs. And what we're doing in crypto is preferring safety over liveness in a lot of ways, especially in Cosmos. And like that's this new fork of database stuff, but there's a lot of lessons that we can and should have learned from the old world. The loyalty stuff, very cool, we just chatted about that. But MasterCard, what are the biggest lessons that people need to that are just like completely missed by crypto people when thinking about these payments use cases?
Yeah, I think it's a really good perspective, kind of thinking about the industry and the growth of the industry and how it needs to mature.
Yeah.
It's just like that typical history example, right? Like history repeats itself. If you don't learn from history, you're going to create the same mistakes. It's not super different, right? Web3, Web2, like there are so many things that work and are tried and true and proven in Web2 that you need to bring to Web3. It's not like it's a completely different business model. There's the whole setup of like the business development, pass it to the sales guy, and then the sales guy brings it to the account rep to manage the relationship, and then there's the support team that brings on the implementation. And there's a lot of these kind of traditional SaaS practices that I think a lot more teams in Web3 should be doing to kind of maintain these relationships and grow these partners and run like a real business model, right? I think some folks rely on some of these cool fancy things that are fun and new that you can do in crypto, like blow out these incentives and inflate the token and these things that might make it feel like they're making revenue and providing revenue to their users and creating excitement. But we know that that's a flash in the pan, right? That's not a sustainable business model. If we need to run sustainable businesses on Web3 rails, there needs to be these tried and true Web2 practices that we rely on and kind of build for.
I mean, one other thing that I think people really discount from traditional payments that's sort of related to what you just said, that's like the online marketing version of the physical in-store sales that has been done over the course of decades to build out this payment network. And I think that people don't really have a strong understanding of that. Bitcoiners have tried to do this Lightning thing and build in these point of sales, and Zcash has been a huge part of this. And I think a lot of the first wave of crypto was like focused on this. That's a huge challenge. And I think now that we have this sort of like internet-led financialization crypto story, going back to fill in that payments use case with evangelists in all of these locations seems to be a plausible thing. Obviously very hard, obviously very challenging, many different standards, but we're getting a little bit closer. Yeah. Speaking of hyperinflating tokens and playing all kinds of fun games, do you want to tell me about your experience in the Terra community?
Oh yeah. little traumatic, little PTSD might come out, but
yeah, totally.
No, listen, I think anyone that's been in Cosmos over the past, couple of years has been affected in some way or another, right? Just because of how big Terra had a kind of grapple with that ecosystem. So yeah, coming from, MasterCard and so Emery, my co-founder, we go back to the college roommate days, and he's a, self-made entrepreneur, killer dev, killer engineer.
Like Emery a lot. Good guy.
Yep, for sure. So
super sharp.
He went to start his own, data privacy startup out of school. I went down the BD route and software sales. He's been in crypto, earlier than I have, but then he pulled me down that rabbit hole towards the end of 2019, early 2020. And, I of course went down the traditional Bitcoin and Ethereum, understanding just the ethos, what's happening, everything click, super, super fast for me. Just kept going deeper and deeper. And then, Terra was the one that, Emery was, really excited about, and then pulled me into that as well. And we were so early in that ecosystem, right? It was before Anchor launched. It was really, really just Mirror and UST and Luna that were live in that early days. And there were no other projects in the ecosystem. So while I was working at MasterCard, basically, working two jobs and we're working on this, startup, and it actually day one. So we were part of this hackathon, the first hackathon of the Terra ecosystem that, Delphi put on with those guys, and a bunch of projects that were some of the top projects across all of Terra came from that hackathon. So it was a really kind of cool experience. We were, our first name was Terra Kado. So that was a little bit of like our background of how the name actually came about. And Kado means gateway in Japanese. So Terra Gateway, right? We quickly learned through the hackathon that we didn't want to lock ourselves into put all our eggs in one ecosystem bucket. So we left that out, stuck with Kado. Kado, people say it a million different ways, but we say it Kado, like avocado. And the first hackathon thing that we did there was spending your UST on Amazon. So it wasn't actually an on-ramp, off-ramp use case. It was actually spending your stable coins directly from your Terra wallet. And we actually built this kind of white label Amazon marketplace where it was a Kado marketplace, but we were pulling in Amazon, API data feeds in real time so that you check out on our marketplace, we can control that payment experience, but the Amazon order gets shipped to your house the next day. So it was one of those cool use cases where we knew that, Chai was shown as this example of spending UST in Korea. And we wanted to bring a lot of those mechanisms here to the US to really close that money loop and, live in crypto, spend the crypto, and, solve that friction point of moving between these currencies, between fiat and crypto and that stuff. So we had a lot of fun with the payments use case, but we realized that the need for onboarding, it was so much more greater than actually spending right now, right? Spending was putting the horse before the carriage, right? Like it was a shiny, cool toy on the shelf that we could point at. Like it's a thing that everyone in the community got really excited about, that spending use case. But yeah, we really, we built out these relationships with across the whole ecosystem, and we realized that we were going to be the main, payment gateway, fiat to UST. So that was
one
really
brief thing I want to kind of double click on is the Terra community. There's a number of projects that have left Terra and come back into Cosmos, and I think some of the most energetic and exciting founders that we have in Cosmos now are folks who are out of Terra. What do you think it was about Terra that drew in such an incredible group of folks?
So I think it just hit every nail on the head in terms of the things that are really important in terms of building that kind of really vibrant community. I think the ethos there was a couple really important ethos in there that really, I think, resonates with everyone. The number one thing of a decentralized money, right? Like, we understand Bitcoin. A lot of people came into the space from that Bitcoin Ethereum mindset of kind of decentralized money, getting out of this traditional financial system. And then the new problem of, okay, we have decentralized Bitcoin, but like, we don't want to spend a volatile crypto. You don't want to spend Bitcoin when it's 50K, it goes down to 30K.
It's wild that you say that decentralized money thing, Vince, because I have a close friend who got into crypto in 2019, and he was like, Jack, I know you do this. Like, what's the most exciting shit? And I was like, there's this guy in Korea. I don't know what he's doing. I'm not super into it, but people love it. It's super cool. And this guy got in it like whatever and rode the whole thing. Yep. And I talked to him the day after Terra collapsed. And I'll never forget, he goes, even though this thing just went up in smoke and I just lost a shitload of money, Doe is more right now than at any time in the past. We need decentralized money for a decentralized ecosystem. And, he's stuck around. He's still in crypto. And it is wild to me how motivating that was and how like unified that community was behind that idea.
Yep. And then you bring that idea, that ethos that resonates with everyone, and then you throw the incentive flywheel on top, right? So then you have the more people that we bring this to, we show this to, we show these use cases, the more people that buy, UST, the more Anchor the more Luna gets burned. It's this whole incentive flywheel that just was so clear cut, right? The more people that use UST in the real world, the higher Luna is going to go, right? Like, this was just a 1 + 2 = 3 thing that a lot of people in the community was very easy to understand that incentive. And then you have the execution and the leadership of Doe, right? For what you've seen in the space, everyone has their own opinion on it, but he was a very good, charismatic leader, right? Like, there was just a lot of things that you need that charismatic leader to have some of those community ethos right? They were called lunatics for a reason. People were crazy about it. So,
people who ran
hurt from it, but
giant multi-billion-dollar hedge funds getting tattoos of the Luna logos.
And that's where it became the point where a lot of people were comfortable with the risk at that point, right? When you see someone like Novogratz or some of the biggest funds in the space from the last cycle that were really idolized, when they were really coming in at the top there and saying that, this is the future, this is it, like, that's when everyone got so complacent. That's when, Doe really
funny enough, that was when I bought some Terra.
Yep. Top signal. Jack was our top signal.
I definitely was. I was your exit liquidity. Yep. It was always something, the underlying stablecoin mechanism. I remember chatting with a number of folks in Cosmos, and I was like, do you get this? Like, this seems like not a good idea, right? Like, pretty obvious death spiral. And everyone was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm glad I'm not the only one who saw that. And then I just kind of checked out on it for years. So it's like, okay, Terra, cool, over in the corner. And as it got bigger and bigger, I was like looking for ways to coordinate technically with them, but didn't really care about the money piece of it because I didn't view it as stable. Anyway, a wild, and then it was like right before it collapsed. I was like, okay, maybe I should take this fucking seriously now. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So Terra collapses. What have you guys been up to for the last few months?
Yeah. So really,
It's been busy.
It's been busy. It's been busy.
Yeah, you guys have been rocking it.
So yeah, I appreciate it. I think it was one of those things that we're gonna have a really good story to tell, right? When it's all said and done in the future, when we kind of come from that ethos, it's pretty much harder to be more battle tested than we are at this point. When we started with one ecosystem, one stable coin, one banking provider who blew up as well, all right, which is another story and a half. So navigating all those waters has been fun, and I think it's going to be one of our really big edges in the future here for the Cosmos in general and all of crypto. But yeah, we were working to we were connected with Sunny and Osmosis and a lot of these Cosmos teams before the Terra crash to actually do a lot of the stuff that we do today in terms of on-ramping from fiat directly to smart contracts and directly to IBC to bring fiat onboarding to Osmosis into these new ecosystems. And that was going to be run with UST, right? So users would be able to buy UST directly to their Osmosis wallet, and we were going to be able to flow from Terra to Osmosis on the back end. But obviously, when stuff happened there, Sunny connected us immediately with the folks at Axelar. So that was the immediate pivot. The immediate focus was we're still going to solve this gap for all Cosmos because it's such a gap, right? There's 50 plus different chains in Cosmos. They all have their unique blockchain. The ability to get fiat to these Cosmos chains was non-existent. Users would have to buy Atom on a centralized exchange, trading fees to actually swap into Atom. You have to wait multiple days to actually withdraw your Atom to your Kepler wallet. Then you would have to send your Kepler from Atom to Osmosis and swap. Like there's a million steps in there that in terms of onboarding users into these Cosmos chains and ecosystems, every step that's in there is going to drop users from coming in, right? It needs to be instant 1-2 credit card bank.
Classic Web 2 thing that people also don't understand in Web 3. And yeah, I mean, the one that's stuck with me a lot recently is when I was working at Blockstack. That was my first job in crypto. They had built their entire blockchain in Python. And I was like, this is the slowest, least performant language you could use. And I've tried this software. It's slow. Why is that? And they said, well, Bitcoin blocks are 10 minutes, and this takes 5 minutes to process a Bitcoin block. So it's twice as performant as it needs to be. And I just remember laughing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's crazy. And there's still so much of that friction today, right? It's a problem that is going to continue to need to be solved. And there's a lot of really great teams of Cosmos that are really working on that right now. There's kind of like this UI UX group of like Kado, Squid, Skip, TFM, Leap Wallet, right? There's a lot of teams that are really focused on that, especially within Cosmos, and hopefully that is a big factor here for reducing a lot of that friction.
Kujira,
yep. It's pretty awesome. I mean, recently, right? That ecosystem, they've been crushing. They're one of those teams again. The talent from Terra,
another Terra team. This is the UX and onboarding stuff is something I've long been focused on too. And most of the work I've done in Cosmos has been to try to break down the fundamental barriers to improving UX. Some of the stuff that we worked on for a really long time around encoding, to switch the encoding format to something that would be usable by the front end. Like that is like deep down work that if we don't do it, we're just kind of fucked. The IPC work we've done around multi-hop and things like that, like that's critical. It needed to happen way sooner than it did. And, those are the pieces that are coming together to enable these nice user experiences now. And I think we're
Strangelove is, you guys are so deep in the actual layer of it. Like everything we do, we wouldn't be able to do all the things we do without what you guys have done, right? You're just not known as like the consumer style, right? So.
And I think that this is like one of the hard parts about the ecosystem is because right now the drumbeat is users. And like I am fucking fully behind that, trust me. But at the same time, we do need to also remember that the platform is important too. And like both of those pieces, we need both of those. I like to say that I build products for developers, and those developers bring in the users, and you guys are those developers that are bringing in the users. And like that's why we try to work so closely to give you guys what you need. And I think that that's been the secret weapon of Cosmos is we've given developers what they need better than any other stack, and that's why we've remained competitive.
I agree totally. So really looking at, filling in that gap with Axelar, right? There's kind of this in-between period of post-Terra and pre-Noble. There was no native stablecoin for Cosmos, and that's always going to be a big, friction point for any liquidity coming into the ecosystem where folks, especially from after Terra, everyone is completely terrified of holding anything that's not a native, stable coin. So, kudos to Axelar for kind of like holding the ecosystem together, right? In the meantime, where we could flow Axelar USDC to Osmosis, Juno, Kajira, a bunch of those chains when we relaunched our V2. So we relaunched our V2 for all these different Cosmos chains running through Axelar on the back end. Right around Cosmoverse of 2022, so last year. So again, it was full speed ahead to get live for V2 there, and then we launched on Bitcoin, Ethereum, these traditional kind of EVM chains as well. But now, very excited about Noble, right? And you're a big fan in that as well. And this is like now the exciting time for the ecosystem, where a lot of these pieces are coming together. That the ecosystem was always going to kind of be at a standstill and kind of in this coast mode until we had native USDC, until we had DYDX, until we had a lot of these kind of windfalls, and they're all coming at the right time, right? So it's really exciting.
Yeah, I tweeted about this the other day, but after spending the most of a year being like, hey guys, I know it's rough right now, but like there is light at the end of the tunnel. We just have to keep working. This is some bear market shit. Seeing the energy come back right at the right time is a big relief, A, and B, it's a shitload of work.
Yep. It's getting crazy. But crazy's good. Busy's good. So we're live today on now like 13 plus different Cosmos chains. And again, a lot of the stuff that we do is really cool, where there was no payments onboarding, into these other chains. So the fact that we can spit fiat directly into Osmosis, swap to anything on the DEX. We can IBC that to the end chain on the back end, right? So from like a Stargaze example, everyone was trying to buy bad kids and these NFTs on Stargaze, but there were so many friction points, like we talked about. It was so hard to get to Stargaze to actually buy these NFTs. Now Kado gets you directly from your bank to Stars in your Stars wallet, but it flows through the ecosystem in the back end. It's actually one of those really unique things that we do that no other on-ramp does, is flowing through these on-chain liquidity, on-chain smart contracts, where all the incentives in the flywheel is actually a lot stronger in the ecosystem too. We drive volume for Osmosis. We drive volume for the chains that we support. We drive volume for IBC, and traditional on and off ramps, they basically have to get a loan or hedge the token while they support it, and they kind of have to short the token while they're dispersing the assets. So it's kind of like a misaligned incentive there. We remove all these middlemen in between, and we actually provide a way cheaper, way lower fee, tighter spread experience. And that's also the big thing that we do when it comes to like on ramps compared to other ones in the space, is by far lower fees, right? I think a lot of people, everyone wants fees to be zero, and I get it too, but it's impossible to go from, like, there's such a difference when people compare buying a token on Coinbase and buying a token on Kado. When you're buying a token on Coinbase, it's literally just like changing numbers on a screen, right? Like there's no movement of funds. There's actually everything's off chain. When you're buying a token with Kado, we're like magically pulling money from your bank and turning it into crypto and sending it into your end wallet in 1 minute, right? And there's a very unknown thing that people don't see behind the scenes, is managing fraud and KYC and AML and those traditional, banking fintech stuff that is a lot of effort goes behind that. So
it is, it's a lot of thankless work too, because it's integrating with banks who really don't give a fuck about what we're doing.
Right.
And the technical work is not like rocket science, but there's generally a lot of work. Like it's like work. Mm-hmm. So I guess what's next?
Yeah. So what's next? We've got a lot of exciting stuff on like the payment side. So we've got, just for recap's sake, users can onboard into Cosmos with Kado from 150 plus countries. We've got Visa, MasterCard available across the globe, and we also have the ACH on and off ramp here in the US, so that simple connect your bank via Plaid here if you're in the United States, and then instantly on and off ramp with your bank account here. And actually this week we just launched SEPA for all of Europe as well. So that was a really big, effort we did over the past 6 months, basically, is we got our own license in Europe and our own, virtual asset service provider entity over there, where we're going to be able to turn on a lot more of these local payment methods around the world, because credit cards and debit cards are a great kind of like catch-all to support every location to start. But the fees are always just going to be higher for these card systems because of the costs on the back end versus getting ACH or SEPA live. That's less than a 1% fee with us. And no one really can compete with that across any on-ramp provider. But getting all these local payment methods now is a really big push for us. So the next up is Latin America, right? Latin America is one of these regions where adoption becomes really, really important, where they're trying to get out of an inflationary currency, getting access to the digital dollar. And these pieces are actually where some of the highest adoption countries are happening. So we're getting ready to turn on Brazil and Mexico, those local payment methods as well. And a bunch more across India, APAC, and Africa. We got a bunch of stuff in the works that is going to be really exciting. And then also a really cool thing is going to be getting ready to turn on a no KYC onboarding flow, and that's going to be up to around 500 euros, 300 euros per day, and that's going to be available to anyone globally using cards there. So KYC, again, one of those necessary evils, connecting the bank, managing fraud, but reducing that KYC friction for smaller amounts is always going to be a great win to, if you want to get a new user in the door, they go with a smaller amount. And then when they really want to get involved, then, they can KYC and move a lot more funds in. So, that's some of the stuff we got going on. And then obviously from the Noble front, we're super, excited about basically pushing Noble USDC to all of these different chains that we support. So, we're on 13 different Cosmos chains today. We've got 10 plus more in the pipeline, and we launched USDC on and off ramping with Noble a couple weeks ago, and that's to the Noble blockchain, which is like the first step. But then we need to get that to every blockchain, right? You need to get native USDC to Osmosis, to Kujira, to these other chains, and that's the big thing that we're working on now.
Yeah, we're working with your team on that. Should be able to knock that out relatively soon. Yeah. I guess so. What are you excited about over the next few months as we're sort of wrapping up here?
Yeah, so continue to just be excited about these launches coming to Cosmos.
I think before we do that, there is a question. It looks like.
Let's see. Just Kado Money check about current tokens. It has all that information. What do you think that's asking there?
I don't know. And accordingly list unlist. It's an interesting question. Shikar, I don't really know how to answer that, and I don't know if anyone really does either. I did see one from Flix Fanatics. Vince, can you share more about SEPA instant payment method that Kado recently launched?
Yeah, so that's, SEPA is basically kind of like the ACH equivalent for everyone in the United States. So SEPA is kind of that instant bank transfer payment mode that folks across all of Europe have access to. So that's basically connect your bank via SEPA instant to the Kado platform, and then that's your funding method for across all of Europe for on and off ramping with us. And again, much lower fees, much faster experience than having to rely on debit cards or credit cards.
Cool. Awesome. Sorry. So I was asking you what you were excited about over the next few months.
Yeah. Again, so really excited about these launches in Cosmos. There's still a lot more that are planned. DYDX is happening right now. That's one that I think the whole ecosystem has been really waiting on, because I think that a lot of these teams in Cosmos have started from an app chain as day one, which is a really great example as well. But someone like DYDX going through this process of launching a DApp on Ethereum L1, where the liquidity is, where the users are, then going to L2 with Starkware, and then kind of maturing and realizing to get to that next stage of the platform of the vision, Cosmos is the best tech to realize that kind of full app chain vision, right? I think that that's the process that a lot of dApps are going to continue to kind of look at DYDX's trajectory and follow in that path. I think a lot of these big, dApps on Ethereum or L2s are going to continue to want to kind of own their chain, own that whole flow, and really, build that chain specifically for their app, for their use case. And Cosmos is the best way to do it, right? So I think Solana has a really cool slogan they've been relying on lately, like only possible on Solana. And I think that there's, a really big thing there for Cosmos as well, that's only possible on Cosmos. And there's so many,
Yeah.
use cases that we can kind of start to point to that should be really resonating with other teams across other crypto ecosystems as they're thinking about what's that next stage for them, what's that next step. So, DYDX is a big one, but Celestia, just launched as well. That's another huge one. Barachain, we're really close to those guys. They've got a lot of exciting stuff in the works. I don't know if the chain's real or not, but we'll see. I love the memes over there, but yeah, there's too many to count.
It's exciting. Well, Vince, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. I use Kado, like your product, a lot. It kicks ass. Thank you guys for rocking it, and look forward to continued collaborations with Noble for a long time.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Onwards and upwards.
Yep. Hell yeah. Let's go. Number go up. All right. Sisla, thank you to you and the OmniFlix team very much for helping us do this. And go check out Strange.love. We've got all kinds of fun things cooking over in the labs. And I will see you guys online. Catch you guys soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.